Cool. Yeah. Cool. Hi. So I'm just going to be talking about some things that you can do with Chrome DevTools. Just before we start, just a quick survey. Raise your hands if your preferred browser of choice for front-end development is Chrome. Yeah. Okay. Firefox and Firebug? Yeah, go Mark. Firefox with the default Firefox tools. Safari. Woo! IE. You would. Cool. It's good to know. So yeah, basically most of you use Chrome. So hopefully if all of you can learn one new thing, then that's mission accomplished for me. My name is Randeep. People can't pronounce that, so I say my name is Randeep, and then people can't pronounce that, so I say my name's Randy, and then sometimes people call me Brandy somehow. I work at YourGrocer. Fancy logo. I spent ages working on that, so I'm kind of proud of that. And yeah, I'm a front-end developer there. So before I get started, I should give a fair disclaimer that I don't actually know what I'm doing when it comes to this Chrome DevTools stuff. I'm kind of just clicking on things and hoping for the best. So if I'm right, then I'm right, and if not, then feel free to correct me at any time. Some of this stuff that I'm going to show you, like here are the settings that I've used. So if you find that like a certain feature is not working for you, you might need to enable these settings. This will all be recorded, so you can always just go back and see what these settings are. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So the elements stuff. So I'm going to click on things. So this is the Elements tab. Can everyone see like the Chrome DevTools font size at the back? Yep. Cool. So things that you can do with the Elements tab. You can navigate via the breadcrumbs. So this is really useful just for jumping around quickly. Clicking on these will just take you around to the relevant DOM nodes. You can filter by CSS rules. This one's pretty cool. So if you want to search for an element at the bottom down there, you can search for a string, or you can also search for a CSS selector. So I can say explore tabs, and then something that has the ID of profile, content, wrap. No. Ah, that's adjacent. Whoops. Anyway, you get the gist. This is really good if you are trying to do something really complicated and fancy with a CSS selector. And instead of just actually writing the CSS selector and then refreshing the page and seeing if CSS applies, you can actually just test your CSS selectors in DevTools itself. You can simulate hover styling. You can simulate like active styling. I'm sure a lot of you probably know this already. So if I go here, I can right-click it, and I can say force element state is hover, active, or focused. Or I can go to this pin up here and choose that as well. Or I can choose it down at the bottom here. So plenty of options to test your various element states. Again, you can add classes. So if you just really need to add a whole bunch of styling, you can just do that there, and then background color background is black, and then I can just go here and say class, and then that styling may or may not get applied depending on the specificity of the selector. The color picker. The color picker in Chrome is really cool. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of this. You can select the color and then drag it out into the page and pick out any color you want. You can choose various shades of colors here. I think the nicest thing about the color picker as well that they've just added recently is that there are color palettes. So Chrome will just scan through the CSS on the page and all the colors there and automatically create a page colors color palette. They've got a material design color palette that you can choose from. Or you can just create your own custom one, and that can just be whatever your application's brand or theming is. Debug tools for animations. So let's go over here. So with animations, I can select this card, and at the top right, I've got this little animation control. I can click on that, and anytime an animation plays within that DOM element, it'll record it. And now with this, I can do a whole variety of things. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but you can see that I'm actually scrubbing through the animation. I can play it back slower if I really want to. And I can move that and extend it, as you can see. So I can make the animation play for longer as well. So that's one way, if you start developing CSS animations, how you can actually debug them and figure out what's going wrong with them. There's also this nice little cubic Bezier editor. So you can just play around with that, and that'll change the animation timing speed and the animation playback function. And Chrome gives you this nice little illustration at the top that shows you like how that animation will play out. If it'll go all the way forward and then a little bit back to add that little bounce effect. So yeah. Search by CS selector we've shown. No changes. So we can also take a look at whenever something in the DOM has changed. So for example, when I open this menu and close this menu, I might want to see like what's actually happening to the DOM. So I can just click that, and then you notice like the purple flashing, that just means that DOM element has changed in some way, shape or form. It's just a quick way to draw your eye to which element has changed. But I can also right-click this one and say break on attribute modifications. And then hopefully, since I've clicked that, it was about to close the menu, but like I've set that breakpoint, so now it's broken at the JavaScript where it's tried to change the DOM element. That looks like a whole bunch of gibberish. So there's actually this nice pretty print tool that will actually take minified and concatenated JavaScript and turn it out to something more readable. Unfortunately, like it's still uglified where all the variable names are just single letters, but it still kind of just shows you that like here, n.classname equals a. You can see like a is overflow and outflow list. So you can at least start getting some idea of what is actually happening and what the JavaScript is doing. And if you're actually working on your local environment, you probably don't have uglified stuff, so you can probably actually see the real method calls and the real variable names and that kind of stuff. Highlight repaints. So let me just hit play. There's this little stopwatch here for rendering performance issues. So basically, you can enable paint flashing, and that means anytime something in your page has changed, it'll flash green for a second, and then you can quickly and easily identify what's actually causing the GPU to run to render the page. And if there are significant bottlenecks, then you should hopefully be able to figure out which one is changing, and then you can figure out like which one's the bottleneck. So when I hover over that, like because of the hover state, it's changing. You can see which one's flash green. And there's also this Fps Meter, so you can see this is running at a nice 60 frames a second. If you've got lots of GIFs on your page or videos or like explosions or particles or whatever it is, then this also will show you how smooth your web page is performing. Might be useful. Generally, I found it's not that useful unless you're doing basically games or something. There's this show scrolling performance issues. I've literally never got that to work, so I've never tried that or successfully got that working. Cool. That's emulation mode. So there's this little device mode at the top here. This does some cool things, like it'll resize your screen into something like an iPhone 6 size, or whichever device you like. You can rotate it, landscape, portrait, that kind of stuff. And you can also use network throttling. So you can simulate how your page actually runs on a mobile phone with like crappy connection speed or really good connection speed. which is really good, I guess, if you're concerned about performance, which you all should be. But my favorite part of this emulation mode is this little button here. So if I hover over it, you can see it says 13 media queries found. It actually goes through all your CSS files, picks up all the media queries, and then it'll display them here. And it'll show you like, and then it'll automatically resize the browser. So like if you've got 3 media queries just for your layout, then you can quickly and easily click on these media queries, and you can just see how your page adapts, and that's really useful for testing. And it's also just a good way to like see where there's CSS bloat. Like here we've got a 510 pixel breakpoint, a 545, a 550, a 610. Like, you know, it's kind of unnecessary having so many breakpoints around about the same width. Favorite part of this though is if you right click it, you can go reveal in source code, and it'll show you right in your CSS exactly where that corresponding breakpoint matches into your CSS. So again, really useful way to just quickly navigate around and debug any problems you have. Cool. That media query. Print styling. If for some reason you actually care about printing things and you need to print things, or you need to have like a checkout page that you want to do special print styling for, you can just go to the emulation here, and then at the media, hit CSS media print, and then you can see how the page will actually look when it prints. So basically just a giant face of me. Cool. So network, the network tab. There are a few things that I can actually do to just analyze what's actually happening when the page loads. At the bottom, you can very quickly see like how many requests were made and how much data was downloaded and how long the page actually took to load. There's this little capture screenshots button. So if I hit that and just refresh this again, it'll record the page loading at various intervals, just like web page tests and that kind of stuff does. And then you can just see like how your page looks at 1 second, at 1.3 seconds, and 3 seconds, and just that kind of stuff. And this is really useful when you're trying to like optimize for like mobile phones and sites that have lots of things to download. Like you still want something to come back really quick, like less than a second, just to let the user know that something is happening and it's not just broken. So you can do that. You can filter your requests. So you can just say, I want to see everything. I want to see all the CSS related requests. I can command click and just show, give me all the CSS and JavaScript files that were downloaded. Or I can just say, just give me everything that loaded in the first second. And you can see all the requests that started within the first second. You can just drag around this timeline. And you can also just filter all the JavaScript files, all the .css files. You can also use regex, but if you know how to use regex, go ahead. Cool. Bars have useful information. Yes, they do. You can click on these actual requests, and you can see what actually happens for that individual file and why it's taking so long. So sometimes it just might be like your browser connection is just taking a really long time, or it might just be that the request and response is taking a really long time because there's just a lot of information to download. So like here's a good way to like identify things that take a long time to download, and you can identify things that you can order things by size, and then if you haven't gzipped your assets, this is like a really good way to quickly identify which are your biggest assets and which are the quick wins you can do to improve your site performance. Sources. So hopefully this works for me. I'm just going to get rid of that. So I'm sure many of you probably know that you can actually tie your folder workspace into the Chrome workspace. And so for some like static HTTP like Angular apps that just like all HTML files, I basically just use Chrome as my IDE, and I just don't even bother alt-tabbing back to Sublime anymore, because you can tie your workspace here. So like in this example, I'm using the React Starter Kit. And it just means that when I open up a file here, I can actually edit it. I can edit it, and I can save it, and then I can hit refresh, and the title doesn't like me. Why don't you like me? There you go, help CSS at the top. Or a good life motto to live by. So I can also do things like Sublime style multi-cursor editing. So if I hit Command D, that'll hit all the scripts, and then I can type that out as I like, and again, I can save that. If I do Alt or Option Command F, I can just search across all files. So I can just say anything that has React, and then as you can see, there are a lot of examples in a React starter kit that use the word React. And I can just search around. So things that I use in Sublime is like multi-cursor editing and searching across files. And if I hit Command O, I can open any file I want. I can open README files. I can right-click and close others, close tabs to the right. Just all your basic like Sublime style features. You can all do it in here. And yeah, so that's kind of like how Chrome becomes an IDE at some point for me, and not just like a browser that I use to debug things. And sorry, I forgot. We can also do black box editing. So if I set a breakpoint here on render, why don't you like me? There we go. So if I try and debug this, there's a lot of crap in this call stack. There's just like all this stuff from React.js where it's saying, do this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Whereas really, all I want to know is like what is calling this render method. So if I actually open up React.js, and I right-click it, I can tell it to be a black box script. And what that means is Chrome will just ignore it when you're trying to debug stuff. So when I go back here, you can see like I've actually just got 2 things in the call stack. It says 28 things are hidden. So I can just say like this is where I set my breakpoint, and I can see that this is the one where it's called from on line 47. So it's a really useful way to actually parse what methods you call and how they chain down and filter out all the jQuery stuff and all the React stuff along the way. Yes. Timeline. Yeah, so this is a really cool feature, an experimental feature. Well, I say experimental, that means I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to this. I just kind of record things and hope for the best. Paul Irish has like a lot of really good talks on YouTube about this. So basically, you just search for him doing Devtools profiling. You'll find some really good information. But basically, what Timeline does is it just, again, another way to debug your JavaScript and another way to find like profiling bottlenecks. So if I hit record here, I click on this, the material ripple happens, and I stop recording. I can see all the JavaScript events that have happened in that timeline, in that 3.5 seconds. And if I keep zooming in, I've got a whole bunch of like JavaScript calls and how they go down. So this guy calls this method, and you can see at the bottom here, sorry, I should drag this up. This is a jQuery, something from jQuery, something from jQuery, something from jQuery. But then this anonymous function is from pen.js. So if I click on that, I can actually, again, jump to my source code and see what's actually happened. So I find this really useful when you've got a lot of JavaScript running in the background and you're trying to figure out like why isn't it running, or maybe you've like included Bootstrap twice on your page, so every time you click a modal, it's both simultaneously opening it and closing it. Then Timeline is really useful for figuring that out, because you can see which methods are running and what they call, and then you can nice and easily see like, this is a method that's called here, and then nothing happens for like the next good long time. So yeah, that's a very basic and static example, but like if you Google that Paul Irish video that I told you about, that's really, really good example of like he systematically just proves and dismantles why you should never use jQuery.hide when you rather should just do add class hidden or remove class hidden. It shows you like a huge profiling bottleneck. Sources. That should say console because I am smart. So just wrapping it up now. The console, so you can actually, Chrome remembers things. So like if I've clicked on this DOM element and I bring up the console, so I click on this DOM element, and then if I just type in $0, it's that exact one. And I think I can go like $1, $2. It goes for a few while. So you don't have to like, I don't have to type in like, why isn't my like card and card short, blah, blah, blah. Like, you'd probably keep doing that, trying to figure out which DOM element's working. You can just actually click on it and then just go here and say $0. I can do Command K to clear the console. And my favorite thing is being able to log data. So if I've got a JSON object like this, cool. So I've got this data object, sorry. So if I was to inspect this, I could actually just click on these objects, but that's kind of not a great way to do things. Normally, people would kind of like do console.log data and they'll just try and see what's happening, but there's actually a console.table. That's incredibly useful, and now I can actually see what's in that object in a much nicer and easier to read fashion. Again, you can just type in copy in a variable and it will actually copy it to your clipboard. So I say copy data, and then there you go. It's copied it. And it's nicely formatted too. I didn't know it did that. Cool. I was going to show you Chrome Canary stuff. I couldn't quite get that working. But there's one incredibly useful Inception style thing I can show you. So if I pull up Devtools for this page and I pop it out into a window, let me just do that. If I'm really bored, I can open Devtools for my Devtools, and I can inspect my Devtools with Devtools. There we go, as you can see. It's like, I literally have no idea why you'd want to do this, but I can, so I will. And oh, there you go. That's me. So.